Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guest today is Prince Turki al-Faisal. He served a quarter of century as the head of Saudi Arabia's intelligence services. He was also ambassador to the United States, to the United Kingdom, and he is now the chairman of the board of the King Faisal Center for Research and Islamic Studies in Riyadh. Thank you very much.
Thank you for hosting me.
I want to ask you, were you surprised when you saw the image of a senior Iranian official shaking hands with senior Saudi officials in Beijing just a few days ago?
Indeed, I'm not in the government loop. I'm not a government employee. And of course, such things happened between government officials. So I was not aware that there was such an imminent agreement reached in Beijing after so many years of talks in Iraq and Oman and so on.
Were you surprised that it happened in China and that China was the mediator? No one really expected it, especially the United States.
Well, I think China was the one that could pull it off because it has good relations with both of us. Neither the United States nor Europe would have been able, I think, to be, if you like, an honest broker between the two parties. So from that perspective, I think China was the logical partner in making this happen.
How important is it? Is it a game changer, like some people say?
Hopefully. You know, we went through this before.
Yes.
In the 1990s, where relations were broken, and then under Rafsanjani and Khatami, they came back again. And there is a reference in this recent agreement to a signature of a security agreement in 2001, when relations were good under Khatami. So I think it will have effect on issues like Yemen, for example. Hopefully on Syria, where we have this continuing bloodletting that takes place. Lebanon, where they can't even elect a president up to now. Even Iraq, where they have, issues with the so-called Hashd al-Shabi and its ability to do things independent of the Iraqi government.
So you're optimistic, but still, I mean, the reopening of the embassy is scheduled to happen
2 months. 2 months from now.
In two months. Things could still.
You tell me.
No, you tell me.
Well, yes. And
you have your doubts, obviously, because of the experience you cited, and maybe you think that there could still be some hurdles along the way.
My doubts are unimportant. It's the doubts of the ones who signed the agreement. They're the ones who seem to have this doubt yet about how soon that agreement can be put in place.
Right. But do you trust the regime in Iran? I mean, you've in the past called for regime change in Iran. Just a few weeks ago, you spoke about sanctioning the Revolutionary Guards and so on. It seems that you have your misgivings about the Iranian regime.
Well, as I told you, what I feel about it is really unimportant, because the important thing is that the two governments who have the authority to implement things have reached that agreement.
Right. But the Iranian regime is cracking down on the women protest movement. It is pursuing its nuclear program. It is probably funding, encouraging groups that the West, Saudi Arabia, considers terrorist. Isn't this rewarding bad behavior?
I'm sure that in the agreement that was reached, that these issues were touched upon. And hopefully, as a result of the agreement, that there may be an improvement on Iran's conduct to all these things. That's why people get together and agree, because they disagree first and have different views on how things are going in each other's place, and hopefully reach a compromise on what can be done by each side to improve the relationship for themselves.
Right. Do you think this could help revive the stalled talks on Iran's nuclear program?
I don't know if that is something that was touched upon.
Right, but as a consequence, I mean.
It could be. Yani, whether the Europeans and the Americans and the Russians and the Chinese who are in dealing with the P5+1 agreement with Iran will use this agreement to try to reach some kind of convincing Iran to go ahead with the JCPOA.
Right. There was a lot of talk about Saudi Arabia normalizing relations with Israel, even in recent days that Riyadh was seeking security guarantees, maybe support for its civilian nuclear program in exchange for normalizing relations with Israel. It seems that the normalization with Iran is probably going to put off normalization with Israel.
You're referring to something that was more a journalistic enterprise rather than
It's not always bad.
official. I'm always say to myself and to others, wait until the official statement comes out. So whether it is on Israel, whether it is on Iran, whether it is on any other subject, so that reference to a Saudi proposal for improving relations with Israel, I'd rather not take it as granted because there is no official statement on that.
Right. Do you think that this deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia could prompt the Israeli Prime Minister to strike Iran because he sees maybe no other way against the nuclear program? Is this a fear that's been revived now?
I think the Israeli Prime Minister does not need an excuse if he wants to strike Iran. And we've been hearing about Israeli strikes against Iran since 15 years. From 2005 on, there was always in the news somehow that Israel is preparing for a strike against Iran. And it hasn't happened, so we don't know. That is for the Prime Minister to decide.
Right. You mentioned earlier Yemen. The Houthis have already said that this deal doesn't change their stance. Do you think that's really the case? And do you think that Saudi Arabia obtained some guarantees from Iran that it would not send missiles or drones to the Houthis anymore, that this was a pillar of the reconciliation deal?
As I told you, I'm not aware of the conditions of the deal that was struck, whether it is on Yemen or on other issues. But the kingdom was in talks with the Houthis directly before the deal.
Right.
About reaching some kind of agreement for the Yemen. And one of the statements I saw attributed to the leader of the Houthis after the deal is that he said, we and Saudi Arabia are brothers. And the cause of the conflict in the Yemen is Israel and America. So he is absolving us of any causality in the war in Yemen and blaming the Israelis and the Yemenis. That, as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, shows a distinct change of position on the part of the Houthi leadership.
So you're optimistic that beyond a ceasefire, we could see a settlement of this war that has caused so much pain to the Yemeni
Absolutely,
people?
Absolutely. I hope so. I hope so.
Right. You mentioned also Syria. Obviously, a rising number of Arab countries have decided to normalize relations with Syria, the latest being Tunisia, maybe even more so in the wake of the tragic earthquake there. The Saudi foreign minister said a few days ago that there were indeed talks to bring back Syria into the Arab League. Is it time for Syria to go back to the Arab League, or because of the crimes of Bashar al-Assad, which you've denounced numerous times, this shouldn't be done so quickly?
I am of that view as a person.
Which view?
The view that Bashar al-Assad should not be rewarded before he is taken to task for the crimes that he committed against his people. But as I told you, I'm not official. So what the official establishment will decide is a better course, that is the course that Saudi Arabia will take.
Right. But you think that it's too early? So I assume you also think that bilateral normalization, like the one Saudi Arabia is going to have with Iran, with Syria, it's too early, that there needs to be accountability as well.
I think we have to see how the Iran-Saudi rapprochement develops. It might become an example for other efforts of rapprochement, I don't know. But and just let me mention that during the earthquake in Syria, the kingdom played an important role in providing aid to the Syrian people directly. So there must have been contact with some officials in Syria to allow for the aid to go to these places in Syria. Yes.
As a conclusion, Lebanon, there's no president, there's no government. Some are saying there's no country anymore. Do you think that this deal could eventually help Lebanon find a compromise on all?
I hope so. I hope so. You know, Mr. Nasrallah, in his statement on the agreement, his main concern was that he was not going to be left behind. He said, "I hope this agreement is not done at our cost." So for him, it's his position that is important to him. He didn't think about Lebanon. So it shows you what we have to deal with in a situation like Lebanon.
Turki, al-Faisal, that's all we have time for. I want to thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you for having me. And I would urge you to come to the kingdom and see what is happening there.
Obviously, this will be another occasion to talk about the region. Thank you for watching this edition, and stay tuned for more news.